Sure.
And we also have residents who have eviction issue, we can put Motel into the hands of their first responders. And possibly support.
But
Public program.
you know, for flexibility spread around,
I understand.
I would support it, but just so you know, I
Okay.
don't know if any of this will go through.
That's all.
I did, that was one of the things. I mean, the FDA was the one that simply said.
Anybody get out
and sell it this way. It's not a whole, it's not a, it's not a great chance, great product.
All the things that not there's no doctor.
I mean, there's one, but I had a little bit of all three.
I'm not surprised.
All right, I have 6:59 and a few seconds, 7 o'clock. So I'm gonna call this meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence, Mike.
Folks, a moment of silence for our first responders, our police, our fire, our ambulance, who are right here in our neighborhoods taking care of us and those that are in need, particularly in times of emergency, but also the wider concern and thoughts for our military. And it's a time of some tension worldwide, so keep all those things in your thoughts for a moment, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And going to ask if, first of all, announce that the meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. Currently, we have an audience of about 7, 6, 7. Yep, there we go. You'll notice that Cody Bright is not here at the moment. He will be here shortly. He is remote, coming back from a job. The chairman's report, I just want to make sure that there's a correction. The board did not meet in executive session regarding anything this week. The office is going to be closed on Monday, February 21st in recognition of President's Day. And in addition to that, I believe, David, you have...
Yes, Madam Chair, point of privilege, I would like to make a motion to amend tonight's agenda, given that there was an emergent situation today. And so I would like to add under new business discussion regarding the activity by Michael's Construction and Energy Transfer on Boot Road today.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that, Michelle.
Thank you, Cody. And is there any question here on the board regarding this matter? Or the public? Seeing none, I'm going to call a question. Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 5-0, thank you. And we'll get to that under new business.
Yeah.
Okay, there are no public hearings this evening. No emergency reports this evening. There is no financial report this evening. And we're down to the approval of the minutes and treasurer's reports. So looking at January 3rd and January 18th minutes, do I have a motion on the table? Can I have a motion, please?
I so move.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Thank you, David. And we'll look at both of those together then. Does anybody have any corrections or changes that need to be made on the board? No. I have one clarification, and that is in the minutes of the 18th, Chris, line 28. It states John added, in the past, the board recognized an employee with a year-end bonus. I think we need a clarifier there and state, in the past, due to having reached their highest salary for the category. If you can just have that clarified there, please. Does the public have any question or concern regarding the minutes? Seeing none, I'm gonna call the question. Those in favor? Aye.
I,
Thank you, 5-0. Moving on to the treasurer's report. Okay, Dave, do you wanna take us on a ride here?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. For the most part, the expenses were routine and maintenance. Winter is a good time when Mark Miller and his team will take care of things in the shop, get spare parts for everything, do service work on all the trucks and all of the equipment, take things apart, clean them up and put them back together. As part of that, they actually put in a very much needed drain in the concrete flooring placement, and ran it outside, so Steve Walker has a nice place to actually work and be dry. He works on all the trucks. They did a great job, and I've never seen a concrete floor done that well. The EIT and tax revenue for transfer is off to a positive start. The EIT is up 85% versus last year, January, and the real estate tax transfer posted 118,000, and that included 52 residential transactions, 3 of those over $1 million. Plus, we saw the sale of the TD Bank on the commercial side of things. We did have cap reserve fund, $58,000 of expenses, which was 100% offset by national grant revenue. This was the fixing of segment C and a piece of segment A that was already completed, but we waited on the final invoicing and grant information to come through. The transportation fund, we did a road widening joint project at West Goshen. That was $152K. We're going to get $3K back from Sunoco, which will leave us at $149,000, and the original estimate was $166,000. Refuse fund revenue includes the recycling rebate, which I had budgeted $10,000 for, and we received $27,000. So we're off to a good start there as well.
Dave, do we know who bought the bank building?
Yeah, it was acquired by the owners of West Coast Shopping Center. They were the rental agent for that property, and when TD Bank moved out, they acquired the property.
That'd be interesting.
One other thing, we had a report from the blacksmith shop. Gary does a great job out there, and we had 557 visitors in 2021. So I thought that was pretty cool to mention. Yeah.
The 52 residential transactions, when did they occur? Is that over a period of time? Is that revenue recognized in January?
Fine.
Yeah, it's all for December. Those are all transactions.
Can someone make a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we virtually accept the receipts and approve the expenditures as presented in the expenditure register and as summarized in the treasurer's report.
Thank you, David. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, John. And discussion on the receipts and bills.
Under discussion on the front page, Madam Chair, Michelle, the comment or the report here of the refuse fund and the receipt of the $27,000 when only $10,000 was budgeted a plus. I wonder if the board would consider in the future agenda, Michelle, taking up the discussion of rediscussing the recycle bin covered lid. We have a $17,000 unexpected receipt here under refuse. And I know that was a consideration for cost and we have these dollars that I know the sustainability committee was very interested in this, wanted to reintroduce it as well for this year. So I wonder if we could take that up at a future, sooner than later meeting and see what our thoughts are, if we have any consensus on pursuing that again with this, these funds that were unexpected within that context of refuse.
It's on, the amount of the estimate was right around $17,000.
I forgot that.
I just looked at that, but right before I left, actually, it was just right around $17,000 program. So is that something that we would be permitted to use that money for, Dave?
Yes, because everybody who would be getting it would be a draft customer, so the phone would stay in the same spot. As far as enterprise funds go.
And so that program, I understand though, the application process starts in the June or July and ends in September?
Yeah, we could start it as early as we want, basically rolling over what Jason and I and Derek have already done, with much more last year, and then, update it with whatever new information we need, or finalize it and have it ready to go, or way before September.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think we did some of the legwork last year, fortunately for us, but I would like to pull off a couple meetings, Mike, just because of the time and how it flows, that we're a little bit, I don't wanna say early, you're never early and good, but given the fact that it's due in September, I think maybe if we hold off until maybe April and get it started.
It just got my attention with this receipt, and Michelle, that was interesting, the correlation then with what the fire cost was. Cody just came in, welcome. I just had a question about, under the treasurer's report, there was a comment about the refuse, their refuse fund, we received a receipt of 27.
27.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard you on the phone.
Oh, okay. and
Yeah,
then,
thank you.
so
Why
I
did we
thought-
get that extra money? How did that come about, do you know?
Just the recycling report, right?
Yeah, but it's also, they changed how much they're actually allocating each year, depending on what the state has.
Yeah.
So, and then it's based off of 100.
But there is performance grant essentially that
Yes.
each year, and they usually have a 2-year lag, so this was,
Yeah.
this 2020 or 2019?
2019.
Yeah.
All right, are there any further questions on the board here regarding the bills?
None.
None at this time. Are there any questions from the residents? Seeing none, I'm gonna call the question on the matter of accepting the bills and paying the bills.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone against? Thank you. And on to old business, continued discussion and consideration of the new method for delinquent utility collections. This is not up for a vote this evening, it's just a discussion. And my understanding is, Dave, you have invited a representative from Port Law Associates to come in and discuss this with us.
Yes, Mr. Kevin Duras is, nice enough to come by and answer any questions you all might have, from his legal perspective. He's been doing this, how many years?
We've been doing this for over 30 years.
Why don't you come on up and use the microphone if you don't mind, please? That's where our YouTube viewers can actually hear you.
Madam Chair, just as Kevin's getting settled there, I just wanted to, just in case any board members were wondering why it wasn't up for a vote tonight, we got the ordinance, I have to advertise the ordinance. I have to go over with our solicitor before we advertise it, so there was a little bit of logistical work that we just didn't get done in time. Otherwise, it would have been on for passage tonight. So, apologize.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate your time. If you want to just start, just give a real quick background of who we are, just to have some feeling. So, again, we've been doing this work for 30 years. We only do collection work. That's our entire legal practice. We collect either delinquent municipal fees, such as refuse and sewer, or delinquent real estate taxes. We currently collect delinquent accounts for over 190 municipalities throughout Pennsylvania, including 23 right here in Chester County, including a lot of the local municipalities, Tredyffrin, Easttown, Westtown, Westchester, West Flightland, East Bradford. So very close to right here, we do represent a lot of people. So that's our entire practice. I was actually on the school board for Tredyffrin, Easttown for 8 years. So I sat on your side of the table for a little bit. So I had some familiarity actually seeing Port Royal from the other side too. And what I can tell you is that what we do is, we know that every person that we're collecting from is a constituent for all of our clients, because they're all municipal clients. So we treat everyone with respect, with dignity, we listen to their complaints and concerns. But at the end of the day, we work with them to try to put them on a plan. So essentially, we offer payment plans, we have a hardship program. So for those people that are interested in paying their bills and just need a little bit more assistance, we'll work with them and do that. I've seen that on the other side. At our school board meetings, we had a little bit more people that would typically come. But unlike the nice crew that's here tonight, they were usually not here to cheer us on and say we just did a great job for the past month. But during my 8 years in the board, no one complained about our firms. I always took that as a really good sign, because as a tax, we were collecting their taxes, as a tax collector, we're a pretty easy target for someone to have some displeasure with, and they didn't complain about it. So I took that as a good sign. But we really do work with people, but for those people who, we give that opportunity and they choose not to, they'll find out that there's ramifications for not paying on time, because all our fees and costs will be shifted to delinquent property. So at the end of the day, the township's not going to be paying for our costs, it's the property owner. And by doing that, it creates a lot of incentive to pay. So for a lot of our clients, we actually see a reduction over time in the amount of delinquent accounts, because largely because that subset who always had the ability to pay and just decide to hold that money in their pocket for the meantime, because it's beneficial to them, that benefit's taken away. So in fact, I did an analysis, this is for taxes, but I did an analysis for our school district clients. We actually represent over 10% of the school districts in the state. And I did an analysis at a convention I was speaking at for our school districts. And as of last year, 89% of our school district clients saw a reduction in the amount of delinquent accounts from when we first started. So it's a pretty significant number. And I think that is because we were able to create incentives for those people that maybe thought it was beneficial to hold that money. That benefit's gone. So if they're not going to pay a bill, it won't be the township bill, it'll be someone else's bill that they'll choose not to pay because they'll realize there's no cost savings now to do that. So again, for the people that want to pay, we'll work with them. For the people that don't want to pay, they're going to see there's some ramifications, and hopefully as a result of that, they'll decide to contact us and thus either get on a payment plan or just pay the bill outright. So I'm happy, I can talk for a half hour, I can talk for 2 minutes about it. Maybe you guys have some questions. I don't know if any questions from the material, or if you want more specific information on any part of our collection process, I'm happy to discuss it. I don't want to take more time than is necessary.
Point out that it's a 2-year contract.
Renewing, self-renewing without, I think it's 90 days or something like that.
I probably should know this, but how much do you pay for yourselves and how much do you get back on say $1,000?
You'll get back $1,000. So we don't take any cut of what you're taking. There's initial cost in the beginning. The only thing that we charge directly to the township is a cost of $40 plus certified postage for each initial letter that we're saying on the account. And actually, there's actually been a change in our process as of November 30th of last year, because there's a change in the law. So now before that letter even goes out, we do what's called a validation notice. So you don't even get charged for that. So potentially, at this point in time, when we send out that validation notice, if people respond to that, you don't even have to pay the $40 on that account, because we might collect it earlier than that. But for those that we have to send out that letter, there's a charge of $40 plus certified postage. We charge that to the township. We pass that cost on through the property owner. And we also don't invoice the township until we collect as much as what that invoice would be. So say the first invoice to send out all the letters was $3,000. We would wait until we collected $3,000 before we invoice the township. So there's no risk financially. You're not putting out any money to collect the money. And then going forward, every step in our process comes at a cost. So there's about 7 steps in our process. Every step comes at a cost. And the key is, again, every step is to create some type of incentive that's a little bit different from the step before they've rewarded. So those kind of costs, we charge those to the property owners. To the extent that there's any hard costs, like filing fees to the court, one step in our process, the sheriff actually goes out, knocks on the door, hands them the paperwork, we cover the sheriff fees. So my firm will front the hard costs for the township, knowing that we're going to collect it. So we actually have some skin in the game too, putting out that money for the township. But again, we know we will collect it. The final step in our process is to list the property for sheriff sale. We very rarely have to do that. So in 2021, it was less than 1% of the accounts had been listed for sale. And we had about 80,000 accounts that were collecting for all our clients. I think it was like 24, something like that, 19, 20, something like that that was for sale. So I mean, we rarely have to sell property. But again, you need that teeth at the end of the process. So I remember Easttown Township was a client of ours, but before they were a client of ours, they came to PSAT, and I was speaking there. And they said, we like everything you're saying. We're a little bit concerned about selling property. And I said the same thing, that we rarely have to do it. But if you told us that you would not allow us to sell property, we probably wouldn't take you as a client, because without that teeth at the end of the process, people will realize that there's no end to that process, and they'll just sort of wait it out and then realize, like, I don't have to do anything. So you need that teeth. But again, we rarely have to use it.
I have a question for Derek and Dave. In the contract, there's a list of information data that we need to transfer over. Do we have that electronically, and will that be an easy transition? And is it true that we have over 50 delinquent accounts so that we would waive the $2,000 setup?
Yes to all of it. You have over 50.
You make your money off of the people that you collect from,
Correct.
and you have to make a certain amount of money.
well, we don't have a certain amount of money, but we need to make it profitable. Let's say that.
Okay.
If it wasn't profitable, we wouldn't consider you to service that client because it would be silly, obviously.
Can you tell us on the average collection, how much above the actual delinquent tax, an average delinquent taxpayer would pay you? Because I'm adding up all your fees here, and I know you won't charge for everything here on every person, but there's several $1,000s worth of fees.
Yeah, it would never, right, so that's like going to like a
What's the
restaurant and
average
adding,
rate?
like, saying we'll have everything. So that would never happen. For a,
I didn't say it would happen,
Yeah.
I asked you what the average ballpark cost would be.
yeah, so it depends on the step they're paying. And I would say most people tend to pay from our firm between the step where there's a legal demand letter and there's a lien. So somewhere in that sweet spot. So that would be a $40 charge that's added. That would be a $175 charge for the letter, and then the lien's $250. So I would say between that step, so probably somewhere in an average on that. Again, a lot of people pay in response to our very first letter. They'll call right away because they'll see it in that first letter. So if you were to hire us, there's an ordinance that you would pass that shifts the collection fees and costs of delinquent property. That list of fees and costs is in our first letter. So people see that. So that's the negative incentive combined with the positive incentives, the hardship plan and the payment plan. And between the good and the bad incentives, we get a lot of people that call us right away. So if they call us right away and decide to pay, at that point, they're only paying $40. So they can actually nip it in the bud right away. If they don't pay any more of that, then every step is going to come at a cost. But yeah, I mean, I would say the typical largest amount people pay up to the stage of getting a judgment is probably around $800 total if they go through all those steps to get a judgment. And then if they listen for sheriff's sales, a lot more because there's sheriff's costs and fees. Again, and we front those costs, but there's a significant cost once it goes to sheriff's sales. Our goal is totally not to have it go to sheriff's sale for not only the reason that our clients aren't getting their money in time, but then we're gonna have to put out a couple $1,000 cost for that client to legally list it for sale. So there's no goal to list it for sale. Our goal is to get you your money quickly. And if we do a good job, we'll be here for a long time, and then maybe you'll tell your neighbor that we did a good job, and then maybe we're representing them. And, you know, because the reality is, like, we do, some of our clients, as I was looking back at that school district list, we had one of our clients that the number of delinquent accounts they've had since we first started reduced by 66%. That's great for them. And that's great for us in the sense that we're doing a great job. Not so great in the sense that we lost a lot of business potential from that own, that different client. Again, because of that, we continue to get more and more school districts as people see it, like, oh, wow, that's a pretty impressive number. So our goal would be to hopefully reduce your number going forward, and while at the same time, obviously bringing in the money that's outstanding at no cost to the township. So.
Okay, I have a quick question. So let's go ahead and say that all of our residents get on board with paying their amount. What happens then? Do we have to pay for?
You mean going forward? So after this year, 100% of people pay on time, then you don't need us anymore.
So,
There's no account.
but if there's say 15 or so, would we be paying?
No, so so there's an initial charge of $2,000 to give less than 50 accounts, because that's a client that'd be really difficult for us to make a profit. But there's some people that will do that because they just want to collect or they have a small amount of accounts that just have to have a really high balance on them. So sometimes we'll work with different people. We don't prefer that because it's tough for us to make any money. But if you would initially place over 50 accounts, that's the pay essentially too for all of our work to sort of bring you on as a client. We could update our database, we could create forms, we could do a lot of stuff initially. So we're talking about that $40 plus postage. That's not a profit margin for us. That's almost like a pass through to sort of get things going. But over time, once we get all that stuff on the system, it doesn't cost us much more to continue to represent that client anymore. So next year, you have 10 accounts, you send us 10 accounts. Whatever it is, there's no pay, that $2,000 is only the very first time we enter the contract.
Thank you.
Just because it's a contract that we would probably have difficulty making profit on, and thus taking the risk. So
Okay.
that's to sort of negate that risk. But once we're on, you can use this for the rest of the time.
Okay.
And what we would want, I'll tell you though, is like, we don't want a client saying, we still have 100 accounts, but we're just gonna give you a couple of them. That's not gonna be helpful to us. So,
100%.
yeah, we had a client that was trying to do that, and it's like, you're not helping yourself either. You have accounts that aren't being collected, just give us your accounts and we'll collect them. But, no, there won't be a cost going forward, so, right.
Any other questions? Mike?
Kevin, if you would clarify this, I think I know the answer, but if you could to hear it,
Sure.
hear your response. we talked about incentives and positive incentives that afforded, if you will, in this process. No one wants to do that, but it's nice to know that there are some positives in it to at least move on as efficiently as possible for everyone concerned, particularly our customer, our resident. But do we also have the discretion to have a further positive incentive under the right circumstance? Could be a hardship situation where you will interface with the township staff to afford the discretion to waive either penalties or interest depending on the particular circumstances of a delinquent account, so that it might speed up, we might not get some interest or penalties, but we can clear the account, we get the principal out of it. Is there?
It showed, of course, I mean, right, so if you hire us, there's gonna be two direct points of contact. You're gonna have a team attorney who's gonna be handling your account specifically. You'll have an account manager who's a non-attorney who might even have more knowledge about your accounts internally. And then I'm always available too. And then there's another attorney that will be also, who's always available. But in any event, there'll be contact between those points of contact and your staff. And, right, there's a unique situation, like, right, we would want to deal with it. The only thing I'm gonna tell you though is just we want to make sure you're treating everyone the same. So whatever unique situations you have, you want to think about those ahead of time and draw sort of lines in the sand. I mean, we treat hardships on a case-by-case basis, but it's a uniform case-by-case basis. That person will fill out a hardship application with our firm, and they list their assets, they list their liabilities, they list their special circumstances, they list what they can pay per month. So that's uniform, but then when we analyze that, obviously every situation is a little bit different, so we try to use, but again, we don't know anyone either, so we don't treat anyone with favoritism because we don't know anyone. So we treat everyone the same based on the parameters that we set with them when we're hired. So that, in that same way, as long as, I would say, as long as you sort of have internally some type of system where it's a uniform measure of the way you're dealing with it in some ways, yeah, if there's a case that you said it shouldn't be collected for whatever reason, you know, you would deal with it that way. Like, we're not looking to make trouble. I mean, that's the thing too. If we, at the same time, like if we see an anomaly, we're gonna raise it with you and say, like, there's something funny about this case or something strange here, and bring it to your attention and not give a bad look for the township because we're just pushing forward with something without looking. So despite the fact that we, as I mentioned, about 8,000 accounts last year, every account's looked at individually. Like we don't push buttons. Like someone's looking at that account before that next step is taken, and it's determination, this is the best decision to go forward now. So we don't just do things just to do things. And it's, you know, in a case where we're gonna have multiple years of delinquency for some reason, like that person's just not paying, we don't run the whole process for every year. Like the first year we're doing it, we'll be running that process. The second year, we'll probably stop at a lien stage because there's no reason to follow another Ridisar fashion. It's not gonna get you anywhere until we have. So again, like we make those types of decisions based on what we're doing. We're not just pushing buttons, so.
Thank you very much for coming out, Kevin. If the board doesn't have any other questions, we will not be opening it up to the residents for questions this evening because we're not passing anything. It was just really a presentation from Kevin. And when we do put that on the agenda, we will open it up for discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me out.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Very much, thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
I think
Right.
our package included this draft.
Yes.
Yes.
An ordinance, yeah.
And that would be a public hearing.
And that would be a public hearing.
And next up is discussion and consideration of the Futures Committee revised survey. We have someone who's going to come up. Great, thank you.
Our expert. Hello, everyone. Brandon Groff, part of the Futures Committee. Just wanted to provide an update on the edits we've made to the survey since we last spoke with all of you. We've made a number of edits for clarity, as well as to reduce the overall survey length and time it can take the survey. And then from a content standpoint, the biggest change is that we've split out the sort of meat of the survey questions around willingness to essentially pay for trail amenities and connector trails, just separate questions so that we can separately measure people's interest in those two specific things. And then there's the question about open space as well. Those are really the big changes. I think, given the changes we've made, the survey should take 3 minutes for somebody to take, maybe even less. It should be very quick for them. I think we've had a number of reviews at this point of language and the intro text to make sure that it's very clear that this won't necessarily imply anything will be happening or all of that. So we've fed back a lot of what we got in the last discussion.
I have a couple of questions for you because I had said before that I disagree very strongly that we should have, question number 10, reducing the amount of open space, possibly decreasing taxes going forward. That is not first of all, it's not a very well worded question. The other thing is we really can't divest ourselves of any open space we currently have. That would be, we should never do that. Really, the bigger question is, if you're amenable to increasing the open space, how much would you be willing to pay for it? I don't want to see C on there at all. I would really hope that we could get rid of that. And you agree with that, Mike? Yeah. The other thing is, I mentioned back in December at the December meeting when Tom was here, that there's nothing future thinking on this survey, really bringing, I would like to know what residents want for us to do in the future. So I would propose that an additional question is added that asks, what project or projects would you like to see the township engage in for the future? Just an open-ended question if possible after number 12, put a 13. I think that we need to ask our residents, what do you want to see us doing in the future?
Related trails, open space.
No, not related to anything, just an open-ended question and allow them to tell us where we should go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in agreement with both those. We could even reword 12 to be more general, to allow either specific feedback on any of the content of the survey or future projects, or we could separate it, really. It doesn't matter.
In that, would you put a laundry list of ideas, or just leave it as an open text box?
Text box. Because I don't want to see us putting any ideas into someone's head, because when you give a laundry list of items or a grocery list of items, then you don't think outside the box. And that's a problem. You don't think, well, the items that I'm picking up could make a nice lasagna, but if I picked this up, oh, it could really change everything. And so I don't wanna see us really feeding that to our residents.
I get that completely. What it does is it presses the survey taker to say, if you have something on your mind, tell us what you have on your mind.
Exactly.
We're not gonna give you paddling here. You
Tell us what to do.
I can appreciate that approach. I can support that. Let me, if I'm,
Yeah, that's pretty much all I had.
Sure, yeah, those all make sense to me.
on the question that refers to taxes, would you be willing to pay this amount or that? I commented on that previously. When you give a number, $25 or 50 or 75, it doesn't, I think I had said earlier, to me, it seems like it misses the mark. It just, there's no contextual aspect to it. You want to pay $25 for this, it's like, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't aggregate into any specific, it's very amorphous. And I said, look, if you're going to ask this type of question, maybe you want to more generalize it and simply say, the choices might be increase the property tax millage, increase long-term debt through bonds, use available funds, fund balance, or use a combination of the above, including grants when available. The 25 to 50, the word pedestrian isn't necessarily right, but to me, it just misses the mark. It's a somewhat randomized number that maybe it talks about people's threshold for something, but what is it? So that's why I've been very uncomfortable with that kind of wording. I know I shared that with you previously as well.
Can I respond to that? We did talk about that kind of thing, a fair amount. And the thinking is that, number one, our premise is that most residents don't really have a very good idea how much they actually pay for each station taxes. That's why we put that $315 in it. They mix it up with school tax and Chester County tax and other things. So when we put that in, and then we put in the $25 or $50 or whatever, we think we can kind of gauge, are you willing to put some skin in it, okay? Independent of grants, independent of that. We're not asking our residents how to go about financing this. We're asking them, are they willing to put a little bit of skin in the game as far as doing this thing? And I think if you go the direction that you're talking about, Mike, you're kind of getting into how you finance it. I think a little bit more detail than you have every resident that want to do.
Tom, I appreciate that, but the other side of it is that it creates certain expectations, whatever it would be, the pundits or whomever, who might want to critique something that takes shape later on down the road, and a board makes the, an update and saying, well, this project is going to be, looks like it's going to be X amount of dollars. As a result, we only have this amount, so we are going to be increasing the property tax, going out for a bond, and it may have X effect on people's property tax or the overall finances for the township development, the affected residents. It creates an expectation of saying, well, you only told me it was going to be $25 more, and what are you saying now? I just can't wrap myself around it. I appreciate putting some context out there with, this is the average amount of the property tax for residents in the township. This is the average, median, not median, but the mean. That's fine. But that's my level of discomfort.
I actually like the approach, because it did quantify and give the median tax, and I agree with Tom, that most people, confuse their local tax and their earned income tax and their school tax and everything else. So, to tie it into the real estate, and people could do easy math with the amounts instead of putting percentages. And I think you're right, and the survey does articulate that funding could be there are a lot of funding sources, but your own personal pain, would you be willing to pay this amount? So I was actually fine with the amounts like that as in the context of putting the median real estate tax number in the survey. I like that.
Well, I would say this, in the interest of trying to just get it going and have some response, we need to do a follow-up. I mean, that was our intent going down the road. We would continue to try and get the pulse of residents, how we would, based on either feedback from a survey or a fresh survey. So I'm willing to just appreciate what you're doing.
Mike, in all fairness, I don't agree with all of the things that you're at. And but if we could make a couple of changes, I would be more amenable to getting that out the door sooner rather than later. So if you can actually change it around a little bit to include some of my thoughts with specifically with the project, what projects people want to see in the future, and leave it open-ended, and also getting rid of the decreasing the open space. You cannot do that.
Yeah, and I think
We have to get rid of that, and if we can get rid of that and say if you replied yes to increasing open space, then how much are you willing to pay for it? And then you can enumerate,
Sure.
if you don't mind, if we can accept, if these changes can be accepted by everybody, then I would propose we'd authorize staff to oversee the changes and additions and get it out.
Madam Chair, can I make a couple comments, please?
Absolutely.
Cool, thanks. Thank you guys, I think this is the third time that it's been back, so I'm happy to be here. Hopefully we can get it out the door. So I agree with Mr. Shuey. I do like the contextual number, because it's easier for residents. I think if you get too much in the weeds about bonds and everything, you want to make surveys as easy as possible for people, because you don't want them to be time consuming, especially if this is going to take 3 to 5 minutes. If you
I think you get too much in the weeds for something like that. And it's easier for me. It's like, oh, it's only cost me 25 more bucks. Okay, well, maybe that's something I really want to, support. Another thing is too, I love surveys. I love free surveys. And so I think this opens up the opportunity for a lot of residents who aren't able to come here on Tuesday nights or Thursday nights for all our meetings. It gives them an extra voice where they participate. So I think this is a really cool avenue. If everyone else is okay, I would like to I don't want to see this again. I want this to be passed. So if we can make maybe a motion to amend number 10 to remove C, which would be the reducing the amount of open space, possibly decreasing taxes going forward, and then maybe adding the number 13, which is an open-ended, and then Derek, if you don't mind, once those changes are made, that we trust you to make that stamp of approval and then we can get it out.
Yeah, the only amendment I would make to what you just said is either add 13 or I like what you said as far as rewording 12 to just make that.
So it's just one less question?
Well, it'd be the same.
I'm
amount
sorry, yeah,
here,
not,
yeah,
the actual one.
but not an actual.
Yeah.
But absolutely.
Okay. Well, I'd like to make that motion with Derek's addition. Okay.
Okay, great,
I have a point to make before we go.
absolutely.
The thing that I dislike most about this is that we only had, hopefully 600 responses.
I think.
600 or 700. To me, I know that statistically that should be significant, but we don't know who's answering. We have to find a way to get more responses. I don't know how you do that, but it's got to be done.
Could you elaborate on your concern with when you say you don't know who's answering?
It may be all the tree huggers, it may be all the conservatives, there may be not a balance between the two. I don't know how you get it out except to try to get a larger number of responses. That way you get more diversity in the responding group. I don't know, what's 600 over 18,000?
More than 7. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I understand that the demographic questions, when we analyze it and make it statistically credible, I'd love to see a bigger response and ideas around how we promote it. I know that the correct answer to that is to mail it out. And that comes with expenses, so.
And the other option was to insert it into a printed newsletter that people have a chance to respond to, but that definitely not before. There
Are
are,
we going to do a printed newsletter?
well, we talked about it, we didn't really firm anything up. I continue to believe in local government, and seeing the experience I've had, electronic world or not, tuned in as we may or may not be, most of us are. A paper newsletter is still well received, I think, at the local government level.
It might be worth doing if we include this in it.
That, yeah.
I mean, you're still gonna add a cost because they're not.
There's mailing,
Yeah,
mailing cost. So $3,000 or $4,000 to mail it, John, I think it's probably a range. Chris, Dave, what do we have, like 8,200 households? something?
8,600.
8,600. By the way, the comprehensive plan, when that was done and the survey was associated with it, whatever that year was, the comprehensive plan, 2016, or what have you, when it was finally approved, I think there were about, somewhere between 1,000 and 1,100 survey responses to the comprehensive plan at that time. It was a more sweeping survey, but there's some comparison there with and to me, if you look at it in the context of the households, number of households, that's a pretty significant survey response. If you put it in the context of 18,000 people, but you're not going to have a third of the population, even of age of consciousness maybe, to complete a survey. So you have to kind of measure that up. I think the 600 I thought was a pretty big response, but yeah, John, I could see it jump up.
Is there any appetite on the board to, spend the money and mail one and see what happens? See if we get a much better response?
I don't want to spend money on a survey to be mailed, but I would want to spend money on a newsletter that could include the survey that could be returned.
I'd be willing to spend $3,000 to put it in the mail and see what kind of response we get. And maybe modify the survey that instead of mailing it back, they could go on to the website and answer the survey that way.
I think that's something I would be interested in too. But these surveys will continue to get more response. The more we do, more people are like, hey, neighbor, hey, did you take this? Hey, go, we want to hear from you. So I think gradually it will increase, but I think it's something that we should explore to, you know.
I could, Cody, and David, I can agree with that as in this particular case, it's a demonstration. The first one,
Absolutely.
this would be the way forward.
I'm good with that. Do we want to make a motion to that point?
I'll make that motion that we approve this survey with, can I amend the existing motion or make a separate motion?
Amended.
I'll make a friendly amendment to the current motion that we mail the survey out with the option of having the resident return at their own expense mail or go online and answer the survey. Is that technically possible, Frank?
Yep.
We can do that, okay. And that's, my motion.
So,
David, that,
I'll second that.
can I get a question?
can I just make a point? When you talk about mailing something out, a hard copy survey, you're adding cost and taking that survey and analyze it. Brandon has a online survey mechanism. He was able to go on and analyze in great detail by demographics, whatever, that last survey that he did. And that would take a fair amount if you have to key on all the responses. And if people are willing to, the concept, staff is willing to take that on, I don't know how much that would take.
It's a good point, but the problem is that we have a large population, especially in Hershey's Mill, who is not computer expert. I wouldn't say computer savvy, but not a computer expert. I wonder if we want to challenge them.
Is there a way that we could just, with this survey, we just get this out electronically, see what our response rate is, then maybe in the future, if there's more ideas that we as a board, not just specific to open space trails, maybe we have a more all-encompassing survey that we send out?
Well, that was sort of a point I was gonna make, because it's definitely gonna, if you want to do it simultaneously, it would definitely hinder the existing timeline that the committee would potentially have, so.
Sure. So I'm interested in doing that in the future, but if we just want to get this out electronically, then we'll see what the response rate is, and then.
I think that's a good observation, is the survey limited to a specific topic, and maybe we want to reserve that.
Let's get all $3,000 worth of the mailing.
For the bigger,
Yeah.
the more encompassing survey like West Bend did.
So you'll just
So
withdraw that
I would
amendment?
withdraw my motion.
Also, just to add, if I recall, the retired population actually was overrepresented in the last survey. So it was to the point of not getting representation from them. I think they were well represented.
65 plus.
And I also
Higher
had to
than
do the
that.
last survey.
Yeah, you should make a better service than what was on the side.
All right. Okay, so I guess then we need to know if there are any questions from the residents.
I have a question. Do you guys know what kind of response rate it is when people have to put their own stamp on it and mail it back?
That's something we could ask West County, Rolls County, the state, right?
So he's asking Brandon.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
You guys don't do anything.
I think it does create a barrier because a lot of people, there are many people that are paying 90% of their invoices and statements either electronically or otherwise automatic. And so stamps and putting it on, I don't know. I know I just went and got stamps today at the post office for the first time in 6 months probably, and that was.
You're killing the philatelist in me.
Okay, so at this point then, the motion has been made, the amendment has been withdrawn, and we can revisit at another future date, a more encompassing survey. And so I'm going to call question. Those in favor of allowing the changes to happen, staff to oversee them, motion is made, so I will call the question. Aye?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next survey will come after we raise the taxes.
All right, under new business, consider reallocating the 2023 CIP funding originally slated for an amphitheater band show. instead used for installation for a permanent pickleball court, or fourth tennis court. So Jason is here to regale us with his plan.
That was quite a mouthful there. Well done. So real quick, today was the start of camp registration. Just fun information for the camp was we had 400 available camp spots. Registration started at midnight. By 7 o'clock, all 400 were taken. We could honestly probably double enrollment.
How many did you turn down?
But we have a wait list.
How many?
It's 40 deep per week. So we're gonna see if I can kind of, yeah, well, I'm gonna see if I can add on additional staff, to bring in a few extra kids. A little bit it's bus related and how many kids you can physically get on a bus. But, they're very excited.
Bigger bus, yeah.
My phone pings every time I get a registration, and starting at midnight, it was like a machine gun.
Some kind of.
That's what it was. All right, so they were here to discuss moving some funds over on our capital improvement plan. The Park Commission discusses throughout the fall at 2 or 3 series of meetings, and essentially in 2018, the back 3 tennis courts were paved over and redefined by myself and the Park Commission as our multi-purpose surface. Thinking it's really the last a little bit in East Goshen Park of laying canvas that we can allocate to a specific recreational pursuit and need. And so, you know, I had, of course, thought pickleball was going to take off because it truly is amazing. But I wanted the residents to really decide what we would use that space for. So we paved it over so we could do basketball, roller hockey, pickleball, concerts, you name it. It was a blank canvas. And so, you know, I marked it as that facility. We put up temporary pickleball nets. And over the course of the last 4 years, the residents have really spoken about the use of that space. You can drive by any time of day, and there's 20, 40, 50 pickleball players out there. It got so bad that about 2 weeks ago, I went to pull the nets in 32-degree heat or 32-degree cold. I went at 10 o'clock, and they're in coats playing. When at 1 o'clock, coats playing. It was a night meeting, park meeting. Went at 6:30 in the dark, and that's when I had to finally get them. And at 5 o'clock, they couldn't even see when they're still playing. So the residents are really, really passionate about pickleball. The timing of this coincides with the project that I haven't allocated through the park master plan, which was the band shell for the amphitheater. Which it's a great project itself, but when you look at finite resources and you have to really decide what township needs most and how you can best use those funds, you know, the park commission over the course of those 3 meetings, you know, really decided that pickleball is really the choice that we should recommend for a number of reasons. One is we see it every day. That they love pickleball, they play sun up to sundown. And I will say, of all the calls that I get throughout the day, camp number 1, birthday party premise number 2, pickleball number 3. And hands down number 3. And typically what they say is, we love what you did, we appreciate that it's here, but we really need real courts. Because the ball doesn't bounce right, you know, it'll hit a little divot in the pavement, and then it'll totally throw off again. So it's for what we did at the time, wonderful. And it gave us a really good basis for making a sound decision going forward. But for the long-term viability of the sport and the residents, it's not the service citation. So in terms of, and then the other piece of the township demographics we talked about the gated community over there. You know, we're double the national average for 65 plus. Pickleball is the fastest growing sport in America, not just for retirees, although that's right now the largest demographic, but 40 and up. If you go out there now, there's 4-year-olds like myself playing pickleball. It's fun.
I've never seen it.
Well, go over tomorrow, we'll be over
I
there.
will comment. I have 2, everyone knows we have 2 tennis courts in Middletown Station, and I live 3 houses away, so they're in my backyard. Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable, and it's all the young men and women in my neighborhood, you know, your age and up. And I'll tell you that the guy that ran our tennis programs for North State was adamant against pickleball. He's now the most avid pickleball player in the entire neighborhood. So we bought 2 nets and now pickleball is existing, there's 2 courts. So I hear what you're saying and I have evidence in my backyard.
And it's active at the villages of Percy's Mill, they converted courts there, and it's active. When I was at ACAC today, down in the gym floor, there were 3 courts, three matches being played, 3 different courts set up, and that's 3 times a week that I'll typically see that. And I know that he's gradually converted courts as well. So and I've seen that statistic too, where that comment about the fastest growing sport, and that's been going on for a couple of years. It continues to be at the top of the pops.
We have neighbors who have painted their driveway.
Oh.
And it's for them, they feel so connected to their grandchildren because they can play with the grandchildren.
I just have one quick question before I make a motion to vote on this. Are 6 to 8 courts enough?
That's how much space allows. Yeah, so you should have the color graphic there. It will be 6 current pickleball installations.
And the other courts, the regular courts can be taped and put nets on wheels and things. If
That's
we need
exactly
more.
what we'll do. There'll be 6 permanent pickleball, and then we'll bring back the 4th tennis, which will be also lined for 2 pickleball, which gives us maximum flexibility.
Which gives you the 4 tennis courts in each.
Exactly. Yep.
I want to commend you for doing this. I like all of the activities you have for young families and children. There's a huge amount of things to do for children. But there isn't that much to do if you're older. And this is one thing we can do. In fact, I hope you're looking for something else. I don't know what comes beyond.
Well, we still have bocce on the master plan. so-
Bocce would be excellent.
Of course, yeah.
Miniature golf.
Miniature, yeah.
They even play that with grandkids.
Can I make a motion, please?
Please do.
All right, let's make a motion to consider reallocating the funding. I don't have the exact motion in front of me, but I'd like to make sure it is.
Okay, would you say you reallocate the CIP funding from the amphitheater band shell to permanent pickleball courts?
Absolutely, yes.
If I could only have friendly amendment not to exceed the amount that's been indicated here.
Well, as of right now, we're not actually allocating any true funding. This is just in theory moving it on the CIP. So we'll be, from here, the next step would be getting quotes, applying for grants, and then there either be an RFP or a CoStar's purchasing agreement. So at some point I would come back and I would say, here's the anticipated cost.
The first step to say, or you
Right.
should just have us run with it.
So the motion could be for you to authorize staff to investigate the process and cost.
And come back to the board.
Well, no, I need that actual motion because on the grant application, they're gonna want some type of board stamp that said you're formally thinking of this.
And that's why it's reallocating CIP funding.
Well, I found it just on my phone now. Madam Chair, I recommend allocating CIP funding from the amphitheater band shell to permanent pickleball courts.
I second the motion.
There you go.
There you go. Okay, thanks, John. Does the board have any other questions right now? Are there any resident questions?
I'll just make one quick comment. I'd love to see the band shell down there and just ask Katie the question if it's legal for a municipality to do capital campaigns. I'd love to see us still do the band shell at some point.
How much would the band shell cost?
We had 92,000 in, the capital improvement is right around there.
Maybe we can do something with friends.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The other thing that I saw in the township magazine 2 years ago was a silo company donated a half of a dome of a silo that they converted into a band shell. It was really cool. I mean, it was a great solution.
Gotcha.
And I don't know how much that would cost or, because.
Sounds like a job for Super Jason.
I mean, it was a really cool looking project. It was,
Excellent.
Between you and Mark Miller, you can make that happen.
Yeah.
So Mark Miller, we can make it happen.
So, since the residents have no questions, the board have no further questions, I'm gonna call the question then. Those in favor? Aye.
Thanks,
There
Jason.
you go. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, David.
Good going.
I think I got one more.
Oh, Jason. So, we're gonna, move to consider moving forward with exploring upgrades to Middletown Park.
So, So thank you very much. So, we do have wonderful park and recreation assets, open space, active parks, but all of it is really focused here on Billy Pike. So, for the folks that live along this corridor, you can walk, you could bike, you could short car ride to the park. But one thing that we did identify in the park open space plan in 2014 was that we have wonderful park and rec assets here. But for the folks on the south side of the township, Pass Road 3, there really aren't too many options. So we do have Middletown Park, which is a 1.7 acre pocket park as defined down there. It does currently have a swing set and it has a little dinosaur way past their expendable life. It's really just kind of a grass field right now. And so I think it's an opportunity for the township to explore providing park assets for the full township. The neat thing about that space is everybody that lives south of Route 3, lots of apartments, condos, they're all walkable directly to it. So we're talking kids that live in apartments and condos, get home from school, hopefully they do their homework, and they just walk right down to the park, play basketball, get on the playground, and things like that. So
Is there a way to walk from most of the apartment buildings safely off street down to the park area?
From Cider Knolls, yes, they go right down School Road. From Summit House, yeah, I can take a look. I think they probably have like an 8-foot fence that we got to talk to them about doing a cut through or something like that.
Okay. I was just thinking if we could incorporate in the plan, some kind of parkway or walkway or sidewalk or some way to get safely off street to the park. Because you got a lot of population, I think that would be pretty great. Just no feasibility thinking through that.
Yep.
But I think it's a great program, and John made the point at the last board meeting that the southern part of our township needs the same attention that the rest of us get repeated. Rather than getting cars and driving up to the park in the central, they need to have services down there. So I totally support looking into it.
Thank you. I went down with Mark Miller, and what I can tell you immediately is that the school road, and most of the roads around there, as long as you're off Manly, those roads are not heavily traveled. It's not like Paoli Park, like Paoli Pike or anything like that. So, the development, I think, should move as quickly as we can move.
We have to amend it for potential pathway.
No, this is just a feasibility.
Okay, the motion's pretty general.
Yeah, at this point, the park commission, we don't have an idea. I mean, on the memo are certain ideas of what we could do, accessible playground, basketball court, bocce, things like that. But really, we haven't crystallized what it looks like. We haven't really visited the site too much, so we want to do a little site constraint design. I mean, honestly, that's my vision of what we would do with this, is we would have a series of 2 or 3 meetings, people that live there walk to the meeting, hamburgers and hot dogs, we talk about what they really want this park to be. Because it will be a really cool, neat neighborhood park. It'll have a different feel than East Scotia Park.
Sure.
We really want them to be as much the drivers of what we put in that space as possible.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to move to explore the development of Mill Creek.
Middletown.
Are we calling it Middletown or Mill Creek?
No, Mill Creek's down along.
Mill Creek is
All
different.
right, then I will
Middletown.
reword what this says. I move to explore the development of Middletown.
Second.
Okay. Middletown Park. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Not the Middletown
Damn.
Dam Park. Thank you. Okay, just making sure. Okay, so we have a second with Mike. And is there any further discussion on the board at this time or from the residents? So seeing none, I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? Aye. Thank you, and
Thanks,
we have that to look forward to. Thanks, Jason. Next on the agenda is consider ratifying participation in PA statewide opioid settlement agreement. Derek, do you want to give us a little bit of background on this?
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair. So this has been in the works for quite a while. The Commonwealth has come to a settlement with essentially pharmaceutical companies, distributors that they wanted to hold accountable for the past and ongoing opioid crisis here in the Commonwealth. So it's essentially the counties and municipalities signing on to this settlement agreement in order to get funding allocated through the settlement agreement. So the Commonwealth is asking for the counties to sign on, and in turn, the county is asking for the municipalities to sign on as well. We went over it with our solicitor. We really don't see a downside to it unless, really the only reason not to do it is if we intend to sue the distributors and the pharmaceutical companies ourselves, which I don't think we want to do. The funding in itself would be used for battling the opioid crisis. So a lot of first responder dollars. We haven't gotten quite there yet as far as how much would come to East Goshen, but we do know for Chester County right now it looks around $20 million. So we would get some funds. We don't exactly know how many, but it has to be used in order to battle the ongoing opioid crisis. So it probably would be some first responder dollars, a lot of first responder dollars. I don't know how much we could do just as a township alone without the first responders, but essentially that's what this is. It's ratifying. You guys are saying that you want to participate in this. Bill Chrisman would then, take the necessary steps in order to participate.
Madam Chair, I just have a quick question for Derek. Since we obviously have a regional police department, is this something that Thornbury Township and Westtown Township have to participate to make sure we get the?
They don't have to, but Westtown is.
Okay.
I'm not sure about Thornbury, but I know Westtown is.
I just want to make sure that if we're all getting this moving.
Because John also and I had some discussions, and because we think a lot of the dollars would probably be used for Narcan, things of that nature, so.
Yeah, free money is a good thing, especially in this fight. Is there, would anyone like to make a motion?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I move that we formally ratify East Goshen's participation in the Commonwealth opioid settlement agreement and direct the township manager and township solicitor to take necessary action on the township's behalf.
Thank you, David. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
Are there any other questions or comments from the board regarding this matter? Mike, do you have any questions or do you have any comments at this time?
Mike, I liked your comment earlier, I wish you'd repeat it. It take a long time, but I agree.
Yeah, I will share that I will abstain on the vote as opposed to casting a negative vote because I recognize the potential positives that can come out of it. But my concern is it's an incomplete settlement. There's culpability from the FDA, there's culpability from doctors' offices, hospitals, insurance providers that have not been held accountable. The same thing was done with tobacco. I disagreed with that. Hitting the businesses, the entrepreneurs, the firms that did it, that understand that there was clearly culpability there, but there was, as we know, with pharmaceuticals, drug research, there is a lot of interface with the FDA. And the FDA, from things that I've seen, documentary related, have real culpability here. And to put the burden all on the companies that produce this and were given authority to produce it, et cetera, and then distribution plays out in many levels and trickles down. I think it's an incomplete and a overweighted moral settlement contrived by politicians, and I can't support that in and of itself. So I say it's incomplete. So I can't vote completely in favor of it, and I don't want to vote against it. So that's why I will abstain.
I just want to, I urge you to say that because I agree with your philosophy, Mike. I think if there is blame to be passed on, it's not only the FDA, it's especially the doctors who will write script for just about anything. And a lot of the pharmacies are irresponsible too. So to put it on the companies is unfair. However, I'm going to whipsaw and say the settlement is set. Whether we take a piece of it or not, it won't get, it's going to happen and it won't go back to the companies either way. So I feel I want to take the piece of it we can get.
I do too. I want to take the piece that we can get, and if we can put Narcan into the hands of first responders, if we can contribute toward recovery programs that are offered by our local nonprofits, whether they be churches or other groups that are that host AA, Narcotics Anonymous, that kind of thing. I think that that's what we really do need to focus our efforts in sending them some support as
And
well.
Madam Chair, I'll say I appreciate the vote of the board. This gives me an opportunity to not pulpit, but simply provide another voice in the context of a public discussion. I know there are 5 or 6 other states that are holding back on the settlement, including states like West Virginia. And maybe that is because they want to pursue suits individually. But, those are my thoughts. I didn't want to belabor it.
Keep in mind that some of those other parties, not the FDA certainly, but some of those other parties are taking criminal action. So they may not be participating in this settlement, but they're participating in other ways that are punitive, so.
And so if the board has no other question regarding this, if there are any questions from the residents, we're down to 4. Then I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? Aye. And abstain. Thank you, Mike. All right, moving along to the discussion of replacement of controller and modems for township LED signs. This is a discussion only, and I've spent a lot of time on this this past few days with my in-house IT person.
Yeah.
So Derek, do you want to give us the brief rundown?
I'm actually gonna hand it over to Dave, because when I was out with COVID, he kind of took the reins on this, which I appreciate.
We didn't welcome you back.
Oh, look at that.
Welcome back, and
Hopefully everybody.
good to see you healthy.
We're all good, appreciate it.
Everybody's
Yep.
good.
So Dave,
That's
over
all
to
you
you.
do.
Okay, so based on the information that our resident IT person said, which is Bert Denishing, he said, based on the message that's displaying out there, the rep from the Visual Information, which is the company we originally bought it from, which is in California, said that the sign controllers have failed. Mark powered up the cycle of sign controllers, would sign in with the cloud service for about 5 minutes and then drop out. The Comcast cable connections are both okay. Bert's able to remote into them and they work. The sign controllers are solid state modules, which are not field serviceable. They're located inside the actual display. The only way to troubleshoot them is to replace them. They're not stocked locally. They have to come from the sign manufacturer in California. Cellular conversion is not actually necessary at this time, but if we did do that versus the Comcast modems, it would save us about $900 per year per sign. So that's $1,800. This entire project, which we got from them, would be paid by that modem savings alone in 4 years. Just rough math that I did. That's all I have from Bert, and we've got multiple prices from, so we got Visual Information Corp. The total price from them was $7,175.03, and that's the service converting to the cellular modems. 3 years worth of cellular data plans, 2 new controllers, and that's it. We did price out KC signs, and theirs was 50% higher for the controllers alone, and they didn't get back to us as far as why they're just higher than the original.
We have 2 of the signs.
Correct. 2. One right out there. One right out there.
Oh, of course, the one.
So, I had asked the board, by email if we would be permitted to allow my husband to go out and look into the situation, since this is kind of one of the things he does. So Ian actually has show and tell, and he can actually explain a lot better what these findings were and how we can potentially save some money in the long term and maybe in the short term.
As Dan's coming up, let me just say that I asked Dave whether or not these signs, which are expensive, have been capitalized, asset depreciated, and they haven't. I think that's something, yeah, if they are, great. If not, it's, it's $35,000, $30,000 a sign. 25,000, 20,000, they're not less than that.
No, at the time they were purchased, that was installation, everything was about $6,000.
Yeah. So it's, yeah, oh yeah. So these, they haven't come down in price like TV. These things are expensive. So I'm just suggesting.
They're not even great. You can't even see the words from every direction.
Well, you know what I already hear, so I.
Or the sort of a similar mindset.
But if we keep them, I think they should, somehow we should start capitalizing. I don't know what the useful life is, but clearly it's fixed. So I'm sorry, Dan.
That's okay. Yeah, as Michelle indicated, I heard her talking about this, and I'd much rather see you spend $7,000 on one of Jason's programs or a printed survey, including the open-ended questions. So many better ways to spend $7,000. So I offered to provide a free second opinion on what some of your options are there. And it's really broken down into two parts. First is the controller piece of it. I was a little suspicious whenever I hear about two pieces of equipment that are like a half a mile apart failing at almost exactly the same time. My spidey senses go up and they say there's got to be some common denominator there. And the only common denominator I could think of before I even went on site is that we've had a pretty good cold stretch here that we haven't had in quite some time. And I suspected that a lot of these electronic components have heaters inside them. When I opened the power panel at the one at the triangle, I saw that there's a 20 amp, 240 volt service feeding these signs. That's a lot of power for an LED sign. So I'm pretty sure that if we were to open one up, we would find heaters inside them. And there's a good chance that those heaters could have failed any time over the last year. But now the weather gets cold and both signs say, hey, I can't operate below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So
Like a
there's
cell phone.
right. So one of my recommendations was going to be, if it's not an urgent thing, is to wait until the weather warms up a little bit and see if the signs come back to life. And if they do, we can open them up. I'd be happy to provide this service for free to work with Mark Miller and open them up and look inside and see if there's a heater in there that could be replaced at a far lower expense than the controllers themselves. I do control panels in industrial environments, outdoors. I put small heaters in them. If those heaters fail, those electronics will start to get uncomfortable. So that would be my first recommendation is if it's not an urgent thing, let's wait till the temperature warms up and see if we can determine if it's a temperature related thing that can be fixed. The second thing is on your, Dave already mentioned, you have the option, you're paying about $220 a month to provide Comcast internet service to both signs. And you can bring the cost down by converting to a less expensive service through Verizon. There's a third option is to install Ethernet radios between this building and the two signs. So that's why I brought this in for show and tell here. This is a $50 Ethernet radio. And if you have two of them with nothing in between them, if this radio can see the other radio, they can transmit over 9 miles. So the distance that you're dealing with out here is half a mile from this building to either side or less. So they should be able to do it. And as mentioned, this radio is $50. So if you were to buy one pair of these, you could replace one internet connection, another pair could replace the other internet connection. Today, Michelle and I just did a quick test. I have a set of these radios that I use for tests at job sites, so this is a paper towel thing. We just set it in front of the sign at the park, and I was able to pick up the signal from the sign at the park at the dentist parking lot and get on the internet through the sign's internet connection. And that was not ideal at all. With this thing sitting on the ground, normally you would mount it up on the top of the thing, and we were down in an indentation there. I couldn't get a signal here at the building, but there's a lot of short trees and wires and stuff in the way. If you get one up on the roof of the building, I think you could get a connection to there. If you could get a connection all the way from one side to the other, you could do the whole thing with 3 of these radios. If we couldn't get a connection all the way from one side to the other, you would need 4, but that's still only $200, and it completely eliminates the internet connections at both locations. So that's how I would do it in the job sites that I'm working on. I have a set of 4 of these radios at a job site near Niagara Falls. They've been in service for 18 months with 0 issues, and it gets really cold up there. It's been fast, reliable service. I only have 1 internet connection to the site. So if you guys are interested and you want me to go ahead with it, again, there's no cost to the township, even if it wasn't unethical for me to have a business relationship with the township, I would still do this for free, following Brandon's lead of,
donating my talents to the township. What I'd like to do is, a second test, try to get one of these, I'll put it on a pole or something like that, get it up nice and high near the sign at the park, and then maybe work with Mark Miller and try to get, maybe on one of their man lifts or something, get up near the roof and see if we can get a signal down to the park, just to verify that they would work. If not, there's a $70 version of this radio that has a longer range, and we'll have an easier time getting through the trees and things like that. But there really are inexpensive alternatives to having separate internet service at each sign, and that would be my second recommendation, is to completely eliminate that service. And I would work with Bert. There's plenty of cybersecurity features built into these radios to make sure that people will be able to hack into it and then, backfeed into the township network.
Could I get one in my house?
Yeah.
Dan, thanks for doing this. I don't have a problem with waiting as long as, do we have any calls or complaining about the sign being out, or?
We have one.
Okay.
I'm in favor of waiting to see if the signs come back from the dead.
Absolutely.
Dan, thank you so much for,
Yeah.
applying your
Dan.
technical expertise, and, I'm good with waiting and, seeing how things fall out and, taking action after that. I think that's great.
Thanks, Dan, appreciate it.
One thing I wanted to ask is, when I heard about the Comcast cost, it may or may not be worth a discussion. Of course, with our franchise agreement, there is a understanding and allowance for the provider to offer public connections, et cetera, to the municipality. And I'm wondering whether or not we may be able to have a conversation with them and say, we're paying for the service, but can't you include this under our franchise fee as a public service and part of the gig associated with the whole Consumer Act of
Interesting question.
I don't know what it is, but it may be worth a conversation. I don't know who they contact right these days. It would either one of them, Verizon or Comcast.
The verbiage I read, I don't know about you guys, but it's more like it was a public, television station, and it had more to do with it, everything with TV related.
Everything was TV related, but also, I know, and I haven't checked this out since I left West Goshen, but they're actually, Comcast and Verizon are both cutting back on that.
I know.
I mean, they're trying to get rid of the free services.
That's the shorter
So,
agreement.
yeah, so.
I don't know, maybe just worth it.
I would rather be in Dan's hands than Comcast.
Well, I agree there.
One thing I forgot to mention, the radios would not only save you the recurring costs of an internet service connection, but one of the line items on that quote for $7,000 was, I think it was a couple $1,000 to do the conversion from Comcast to Verizon. And if I work with Bert, you won't have to incur that expense either.
Dan, can I ask just one question? That doesn't change how we interface with the signs at the township at all?
No,
Okay.
the signs basically, when you power them up, they keep asking the internet, hey, can somebody tell me, am I still supposed to be telling the East Goshen residents that the next meeting is on Tuesday night, or?
Okay.
And then whatever you've uploaded to the cloud response, it says, no, you're supposed to be telling them about the Futurist Committee on Wednesday. Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to know if it was going to be different internally for Susan downstairs or anything. Okay.
The only
Thanks.
thing that I would add, other than the cold snap, Mark did say that we did have one similar a few weeks back, and we didn't have an issue with the signs, but also we have had a number in the last 2 months, maybe 3 months, issues with Pico and power surges. We've had a number of replacement things we've had to do because their surges, where they burn things out.
Well, I guess we just wait and see.
Dan, is there a surge protector for the heavy duty electrical?
I saw a surge suppressor on there. I could not tell if that was on the 240 volt line or just the 120.
Yeah, that 240 can really punch it.
It was a small surge suppressor.
Yeah, so we have so many jewels or whatever.
Maybe we need another surge protector.
Well, then I guess at this point, we're just going to get back to this issue when the temperatures have warmed up a little bit. So we can table that for the time being. On to the next issue. We're almost done here. Item E is the stormwater O&M agreement.
I'll make a motion on that one, Madam Chair, that I move the board authorize yourself as chair to sign the stormwater management operation maintenance agreement
to 1615 Boot Road.
Okay.
I'll second that one.
Thank you, Cody. And, are there any questions from the board on this? And are there any questions from the residents? No. Seeing none, I'm gonna call the question. Those in favor?
Aye.
And no opposed. Thank you. And lastly, under new business, F category that is not on here, discussion regarding Michael's and Sunoco Energy Transfer.
Thank you.
You wanna kick that
Michelle.
off?
I can kick that off. Today, Michael's, on behalf of Energy Transfer, ran a smart pig line through the new laid pipe in front of Wellington and discovered a shadow that was an anomaly that they were suspicious of. They ran a second test and said there were no anomalies, but the only way to confirm that would be to trench that pipe and visually look at it and x-ray the wells. So under the Safety 7 Judge Barnes ruling that was upheld by the PUC, Energy Transfer is required to notify the township before they do any actions like that. They failed to do that. And everyone knows over the last 4 to 5 years, whether these failures were just an oversight or an intention, they're almost like a petulant teenager. They do these things and say, I'll do better the next time. And I think our residents are tired of this. And I'll also comment that while they're digging on when they run these smart pigs, they shut off the upstream level, empty the pipes, shut off the downstream, and then put the pigs through. So they're digging on an empty line, but running adjacent to it is the Mariner 1 line, which is an active NGL pipeline pressurized with material running through it. As of about 6 o'clock, there were about 15 Michael's trucks out there. They were going to work until they were not permitted to work any longer at 7 o'clock. They visually looked at the pipe. They say the wells all look good. They can't certify until an engineer comes out, and that engineer is coming out tomorrow to visually inspect. I'll also mention that that section of the pipe was field cut and field welded, and there was an angle in that pipe. And those angle inflection points are weak points. They're known to be points where that leaks can happen. They're also points where it's difficult to get the smart pig through because of the angle of the pipes, although newer equipment works better in that. So with that as background, I would like to move that the board ask staff to send a letter on behalf of East Ocean Township to the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission and the Bureau of Investigation and Enforcement, advising them that Energy Transfer and Michael's is in violation of Judge Barnes' ruling, which has been upheld by the Public Utility Commission.
Second.
Can I just make a friendly amendment to that motion? I would suggest a letter or follow whatever process is in place to do so. I don't know if subsequently after the ruling, there has been put in place a formalized way to actually make the complaint versus a letter. So I can do a letter as well, but just there may be something else I have to do in conjunction with the letter.
Let's say a letter in addition to following any procedures prescribed.
Let me jump in here and say, the decision from Judge Barnes, was it specific that Energy Transfer was required to notify us?
They upheld certain segments of the decision and denied certain sections of the decision. And one of the areas that was upheld was notification.
Okay, it would not be impossible for us to have our solicitor go into Judge Barnes' court and ask him to declare the company in contempt. And that would be a stronger thing than sending a letter to PUC. It would cost us some time for the lawyer. but it would be a stronger measure than the PUC letter. I just throw that out there.
I like that idea.
I do too.
I would have supposed to notify. It's different, it's formal.
Well, that's what I have to explore. I don't know past the ruling if they've gotten into the weeds and
It would have to be a very time-sensitive notification, clearly via electronic source, telephone, with the staff. The other thing, John, I think that's a really good suggestion. I'm wondering, and I only read the ruling once through, but I'm wondering whether Judge Barnes' ruling on this type of notification used the word operational pipeline versus one under construction. This pipeline is not in operation yet. It's
It's a good question, but you know what? I'd like to hear the judge answer that.
Yeah. But I just, it popped into my head, but I think that's great. That's a good suggestion, John, if the board's amenable to it.
And just for clarification, it wouldn't be our solicitor because Guy Donatelli has been handling
Oh, okay.
pipeline
Okay,
issues for
Guy-
us, so.
That was fine with me.
Yeah,
In fact, he has more experience, I think, in this sort of thing than him.
Well, it is our solicitor's firm.
Yes.
The firm is the
You're
same.
correct.
Yeah.
The firm is the same.
Just want to clarify.
Just-
Yeah.
Attorney is.
Exactly.
So the amendment would be that,
We
In
asked our
addition
solicitor-
in addition to sending a letter, we explore with our solicitor any appropriate further action.
including a direct contact with the court, John, as you suggested with the.
Yeah, if you go in and ask the judge for contempt citation.
I'll second that.
any further board discussion?
I'm disgusted. I don't.
I don't have any words. I'm just disgusted.
That part of the pipeline is what the Williams pipeline person I referred to earlier in a public meeting a week ago, that says ground zero, that all the township utilities run through that.
Yeah, it's right outside
All the
Wellington.
pipelines in front of Wellington, in front of a school, in front of a business, it's unconscionable that they would do that without notifying us.
Well, I drove by there right before I came over here.
Yeah, they had the lights on.
Yeah.
They're digging it up.
It's a long stretch. They're not just going straight down 4 or 5
it's
feet
like
or something like that.
50 feet or more.
Yeah, they're digging the whole pipeline up again, so I'd like to, yeah.
David, I have a quick question. You said 7 PM. I was having a conversation with Mark Miller, and I thought they would be out there till 9 or 10. I thought our ordinance said 9 or 10.
Whatever the ordinance.
Okay,
I may
I
have
just wanted to,
Yeah.
I may have misspoken.
I'm gonna expect the lights are gonna be on. I'm gonna drive by and go way back. I'm gonna guess to get the lights and they're digging away.
That's still too late.
I agree. I agree.
It's
10 is too late.
making noises, and they haven't noticed it.
The noise ordinance. It says 10 o'clock.
Right in front of the.
Well,
Yeah,
continuing living
Folks
facility.
need to do it.
10 o'clock is still too late. So that said, I might just take a drive, I might take a drive over, a little before 10 o'clock and sit and wait and then make a call till we go, if they're still operating. I'm gonna just do that.
I've done that. In that same location when they were doing the construction.
I'm gonna do that. So then I'll do that tonight. No other board comments at this time, and the public. Christina, Dan, do you wanna come on up, Dan? This guy is coming up again.
Dan Truitt, 1430 Grand Avenue.
Since I'm here, I'll just commend this, taking this action because it's important. You're gonna send a message to any other pipeline operators that might wanna make changes here in the future that shows that East Ocean is gonna hold them to the letter of the law. So it's absolutely the right action to take.
All the other pipelines hate energy transfer because they've been put to bed
Rotten
after,
apple.
that they know that we've all understand.
Any other comments or questions?
I can comment real quick.
Absolutely.
Derek, is there a way, I know we were just talking about how the noise ordinance, 10 PM is too late, I think we're all in agreement with that. Is that something we can work with the pipeline task force to get this?
I don't think it's a pipeline task force issue.
So we can get that on the agenda then sooner rather than later potentially?
I mean, I could have it on whenever you guys want. I just have to advertise it as an ordinance change.
I mean, I don't know if anyone else is,
One thing you can do is look at that ordinance. The other thing you can and that is modeling a nuisance ordinance that other townships have.
Didn't we do that?
No, we
We
talked
did
about
not act on that, and I think that that's something that, as a board, we should revisit the other townships modeling a nuisance ordinance that we could use to enforce some of the construction issues. And so,
I thought we did something like that, when Rick was still.
we looked at it, but we didn't act on it. So we can resurrect that.
So let's get both of those onto an agenda in the next couple of meetings.
Sure, yeah, I mean, the one's an easy one. The one we can pass rather simply. The nuisance one will take a little bit more legwork, but there are models around here that I actually was part of the one we passed in West Goshen, so it's not too heavy of a lift.
If there are no other further public comments, then I'm going to call the question. Those in favor? Aye. No opposed. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're on to number 12. Any other matter? Cody, anything? No, we've got nothing here. No.
I'm good.
Public comment period. Is there any general comments that we should hear from our public? Seeing none, there are no liaison reports. There is no correspondence or reports of interest, except Mary Ellen and Russ Miller were in favor of the Park and Rec recommendation for pickleball courts and tennis courts. And I'm going to accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, and I have a second. Terrific. All in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody.
Yes. Send it today and,
My apologies for being late tonight.
Hey.
Comes out.